We very much know what happened behind the scenes now. It's almost a month since Joe Biden had that catastrophic debate performance opposite Donald Trump. And many people thought that the whole idea of the Democrat ticket agreeing to a debate so early, so far ahead of the election, might have been an effort by some of the Democrats to actually show the world what they all secretly turn out to have known, which is that Joe Biden was far from firing on all cylinders these days. That fact that was known by readers of certainly conservative media seems to have come as a great shock to some of the Democrats and certainly a lot of their supporters. And so, in the weeks since, there has been an effort, first of all privately and then increasingly publicly, among senior Democrats to signal to Joe Biden, it's time to leave. It's very interesting. In the days before Sunday, there was a growing public set of statements by Democrats, all sort of saying that Joe Biden wasn't fit to X, Y, Z. The minute that he released this strange statement on X, formerly known as Twitter, on Sunday, the moment he released that, suddenly now all the Democrats are saying Joe Biden is the best of us, easily pushing him out in recent days. It's Nancy Pelosi, it's Chuck Schumer, and many others. The whole leadership of the Democrat Party realized that they were running a candidate, frankly, totally unfit for the office. It was perfectly clear he couldn't perform the task. He couldn't stay awake on television very easily. No way he was going to run the country for another 4 years, although it does raise the question of exactly who's running it now. And the answer is, we don't know.
And that's the point, I suppose. He may have dropped out as the nominee, but he's still actually the president. And that said, he's cancelled a number of engagements this week and has extended his trip in Delaware. We also understand that despite confirmation by his doctor, he only has mild COVID symptoms. So what on earth's going on here?
Well, the COVID symptoms might be mild, but none of the other symptoms are. It's, as I say, just increasingly obvious to people, and in the whole slew of news that came out in the last month, just perfectly obvious that this was not a candidate at 81. Some 81-year-olds might be sprightly, but Joe Biden isn't among them. It became perfectly obvious he wasn't going to be able to last for another 4 years. Of course, as you say, I mean, there's still half a year almost for him to go, for him to be running the most important country in the world. But this has been a sort of lovely sort of crowning of Kamala Harris as his successor. I think there might be a bit more pain to come from within the party, because not everyone in the Democrat hierarchy is absolutely sure that Kamala is their winner in November.
No, but Kamala Harris has told a rally in Wisconsin that she has enough support to secure the Democratic nomination. Here she is announcing it.
So, Wisconsin, I am told as of this morning that we have earned the support of enough delegates to secure the Democratic nomination.
But here's Representative Chuck Schumer's rather awkward announcement, I think, backing Kamala.
So now that the process has played out, from the grassroots bottom up, we are here today to throw our support behind Vice President Kamala Harris. I'm clapping. You don't have to.
Douglas, the Democrats seem, I think, more resigned to the fact that Kamala will be the nominee rather than excited about it, don't you think?
Well, I mean, it's hard to see who could be excited about it. Simply on a polls level, in the prospective polls of how people think they might vote in November, Donald Trump was already beating Joe Biden by 2 points. In most polls, he's already beating Kamala Harris by 5 points. So I don't know who would be especially excited about this. Kamala is obviously very excited about it and is going to show her enthusiasm in that normal, usual, and completely non-fake way she has of expressing enthusiasm for things, principally herself and her own words. But she might be enthusiastic, but it's hard to see who else is. I watched a speech of hers that she gave last Thursday in North Carolina, and to say that the content of it was vapid is to enormously sort of praise her. Really, there's almost no banality that she cannot come out with. And what is her vision? It's a sort of sub-Obama rhetoric with absolutely no detail added onto it. And it's not clear what she wants to do other, of course, than to go forwards in time rather than backwards in time, which is something she's especially passionate about.
But Douglas, do the Dems actually have another choice? Is there actually another viable option at this point so late in the race?
Well, it would have to be a really stunning household name. There are a couple that are being thrown around, but how likely they are to do anything, I don't know. The enormous selfishness actually of Joe Biden and Jill Biden and the Biden family in keeping Biden pretending he was going to run until last Sunday. The selfishness of it actually is that if he'd have said, say, a year ago, look, I've done my spell in office, I've done everything I can, I'm in the twilight of my years, and it's time for next generation to come along. There could have been at least a year for Democrat candidates to put themselves forward, put forward their perspectives for leadership, have an open debate among themselves, and for the best man or woman to win. But because Joe Biden hung on with such clenched fingers onto the presidency, the fact that Jill Biden egged him on even when she must have did see, that he couldn't even walk onto a stage without a detailed map of the terrain, suggests that actually, these people who have been saying what patriots they are and so on have really mucked things up for their own political side, their own political party.
I don't think I could have put that better. But back to Kamala, and we have seen snippets of Kamala Harris over the course of the last 3 years. Very few of those snippets have been edifying, Douglas. Here she is as Senator applauding the idea of defunding the police.
Right now, what we're seeing in America is many cities spend over 1/3 of their entire city budget on policing. But meanwhile, we've been
You support the Medicare for All bill, I think initially
Correct.
co-sponsored by Senator Bernie Sanders. You're also a co-sponsor.
Douglas, you mentioned earlier the Obama talking points without the detail. Do we know what she actually believes in and whether and to what extent that would form part of any Democratic policy platform?
No, we have very little idea of what she believes in, actually, because she either says things like, that's why we need to have the conversation about that. That's one of her tricks whenever she gets into a corner where she really doesn't know what to say. And the rest of it, as I said earlier, are sort of banalities. This is somebody who, from the clips you just played, seems to think that they can answer the problems of education in America, of healthcare in America, of crime in America. But there's absolutely no meat on the bone. I mean, the idea is in that first clip that it's an either or in regards to policing or schooling. It's not a lack of money that's the problem in American schooling. It's a lack of decent teaching and a lack of discipline in the schools. There are American students in even the poorer states who have more money per pupil paid by the state for their education than in most countries around the world, and yet they still have some of the worst literacy and numeracy rates. Now, that's not a failing of funding. That's a failing of the teaching unions across America, among much else. Only Kamala Harris can present these complex problems, pretend the solution to them is simply more money, and promise to put more money everywhere, and make it not at all clear exactly how that money would be of any use. As I say, it's all vapid and empty rhetoric, and it's very unclear what she actually believes. She just says what she needs to say to get through the next 10 seconds of any interview or speech.
Which is going to be a huge problem if she, God forbid, turns out to be the president. But there's also been plenty of chatter about who her vice presidential candidate may be. A few suitors have started turning up, being very flattering about Kamala in the last couple of days. Where do you think this will land?
Well, I mean, it's actually not clear to me that the most talented people in the party are going to put themselves forward. Does Kamala Harris and your name on a ticket seem at the moment to be a good prospect for you if you're a Democrat, an ambitious Democrat? I think probably not. I think quite a lot of the people that people assumed would get into the race actually won't, if she is certainly the top of the ticket, because they will be the vice presidential running mate to a walking disaster. I mean, we'll see. There's a long way to go. In the next sort of almost 4 months, there will be. I mean, we've seen just the last week. You mentioned at the top of the show that just the last week has been an unbelievable amount of things happening, from the attempted assassination of former President Trump to Joe Biden stepping out of the race on Twitter. So almost 4 months, absolutely anything can happen. But I just think that the Democrats are kidding themselves, but no one else, if they think that Kamala Harris is a strong candidate.
Yeah, well, I think that's a very, very fair call. And back to where this week kind of started, obviously with that attempted assassination of Donald Trump. Secret Service head Kimberly Cheadle she's finally stepped down overnight. This is, of course, following the Secret Service's total failure to protect the former President Donald Trump at that rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. They had one job and they absolutely botched it. Here is what Speaker Mike Johnson had to say.
Our reaction, the immediate reaction to her resignation, is that it is overdue. She should have done this at least a week ago. I'm happy to see that. I'm happy to see that she has heeded the call of both Republicans and Democrats. Now we have to pick up the pieces. We have to rebuild the American people's faith and trust in the Secret Service as an agency.
And it's no wonder she had to go, especially after that spectacle that was the questioning by the House Oversight Committee on Monday. Quite a sight to behold, both Democrats and Republicans calling for her resignation. But I think this was probably my favourite exchange of the hearing. Douglas, the hubris that was on display at that hearing was absolutely extraordinary. Why on earth did it take so long for that reality to set in?
Well, I watched that hearing and came away with the view that that the now former head of the Secret Service has clearly decided that her aim in the hearing was to say as little as possible whilst presenting herself as being as helpful as possible. She wouldn't answer even the most basic questions like, when did you start preparing for this hearing? She said things like, well, to the best of my recollection, or I can't recall, or it was no skin off her nose if she'd have just said, I started preparing the moment I heard, which was 6 days ago, or whatever. She seemed to be intent on not giving any details in case she could somehow be tripped up on them at some later date in the hearing or afterwards. And that was just a disastrous tactic. She was repeatedly asked about timelines, and it turned out she didn't have them. It really was an embarrassment. She was a political appointee of Joe and Jill Biden, was apparently close to them and respected and liked by them when she was in charge of then Vice President Biden's security detail. She obviously was not the right person for this job. She certainly wasn't the right person to represent herself in front of a congressional hearing. And I think it's probably very good that she's gone. That said, there is an enormous amount that still needs to be found out and interrogated about exactly what did happen that day at the Trump rally, because there's so many security failings that we now know that have come out. And as I said last week, this is, the world was just too close by a couple of millimeters from something utterly catastrophic happening.
Absolutely, and it's very fair that representatives on both sides of the aisle want to know what happened, because obviously they are all in danger if the Secret Service isn't doing what it needs to be doing. Now, one last topic, and we know Benjamin Netanyahu is in the US to meet with the government in relation to the ongoing war in Gaza. It's been reported that Kamala Harris is going to boycott Netanyahu's address, but that's not all. Apparently, pro-Palestinian protesters have invaded the Capitol building. If this wasn't so serious, Douglas, it would just be the most epic political satire.
Well, yes, but I mean, it is very serious because, I mean, here we see a very important relationship for America and Israel. being put under strain not by these nincompoop protesters. I mean, they should all just be, arrested as anyone else would be if, say, they broke into the Capitol building. But the thing that's putting strain on it is that decision by current Vice President Harris not to preside over the session. I think she's speaking to a high school somewhere in Vermont or something at the time when she could be presiding at that joint session. Clearly, she is making this more of a political point than it needs to be. There has actually always, and we'll see, but it is a snub actually by Kamala Harris, and a very bad sign. Netanyahu is also meant to be meeting Joe Biden to express his thanks for Joe Biden's support since October, but it's not even clear if that's going to happen because it's not clear if Biden's well enough to meet him, it seems. So that, according to reports today. So we'll see, but it should be an important time for America and Israel to re-emphasize the strength of that relationship. And if it is politicized by Kamala Harris and others, it'll be to the detriment of both countries and a lamentable situation which should never have arisen.
No, and I think there's plenty more to come out in the wash there. Thank you so much, Douglas Murray.
Great pleasure. Thank you.